Hi, I'm Tanetta Smith, and I'll be sharing my bipolar proposal outline on the research paper that I'll be writing about. Proposably, it is what effects do bipolar have on the youth? So why it's important and what's the prevalence? Unless you have bipolar, one cannot understand the lived experience of this disorder. But to listen and learn from those who deal with it daily is how we will learn to support their journey. Sometimes called manic depressive disorder, with symptoms of depression, with episodes of dramatic mood shifts, mania, irritable mood, cognitive thoughts, and decreased sleep, just to name a few. Individuals with bipolar struggle with this almost on a daily basis. The prevalence of this is about 1% of people have bipolar 1, and 1% of people have bipolar 2, and 2% have it without the full criteria. The prior estimated in 2001, 2003, the prior estimated statistics were 2.8% of adults have bipolar, and 2.8% of those adults are females, and 4.7% are aged 18 to 29. There's an estimated 2.9% in adolescents. So bipolar disorder is responsible for the loss of more disability adjusted life years than all forms of any other diseases as cancers and major neurological conditions, and primarily because of the onset, and it's chronic across a lifetime. The prevalence of the severity of the bipolar disorder, that was a quote from them in the Science Daily 2011. And then I reviewed the international impact of bipolar disorder, highlights needs for recognition and better treatment availability, which talked about the severity of the impact of bipolar disorders and the symptoms that come with it. The study was funded by the National Institute of Mental Health, and the results were less than half of those with bipolar symptoms receive mental health treatment. In low-income countries, only 25% reported having contact with mental health professionals. And the disability and the transitions to adulthood by Janus 2009's report was really just talking about how people progress, how young people progress toward adulthood and transitioning, and finding it difficulty with transitioning into full-time employment and independent residence, having those marrying relationships and having children. It also talked about how in our Census Bureau, 51 million people, or 18% of 283 people, reside in the United States in 2002 had a disability, and that was a study from Steinmertz 2006. It also talked about how to transition and transitioning, the barriers they would have to face, and with employment, independent living, married, and parenthood. Just to name a few, I found it to be a really excellent study. They did a quantitative study. Focus on exceptional children was a vocation in transitional interventions for adolescent and young adults with emotional and behavioral disorders, and that is from Bullis and Cheney in 1999. And it talks about in 1992 how the amendments to the Individuals with Disability Education Act was defined, and the transition was defined as transition service mean a coordinated set of activities for a student designed with an outcome-oriented process that promotes movement from school to post-school activities, including post-secondary education, vocational training, integrated employment, continuing and adult education and adult service, independent living, and community participation. And from there, the purpose was to learn more about young adults who have bipolar and how they deal with their daily lives, their concerns, their coping skills, and what works best for them. So my hypothesis was, how can we better rehabilitate? How can we help better rehabilitate them as rehabilitation counselors? How are we going to be able to assist them in the services to the youth that have bipolar disorder? So the methodology that I used was qualitative and definitely subjective. It was interviews based on 2 individuals. I used solution-focused method in asking questions. The assignment to conduct 2 interviews were given. So the first one was March 18th with a young lady named Hans, who was 19-year-old single Caucasian female. And then she was unavailable for a follow-up, and I did my second interview on April 25th with Kay, a 17-year-old African-American single female who is a single parent as well. Both of them were interviewed, and each document was transcribed from the audio tape that I took of them, which they both agreed. It was annotated. I wrote notes on a separate piece of paper. I then wrote code words. I extracted words that I felt were significant and consistent. And then I categorized them individually. And then I did the code book for each. I put them together and extracted themes from both of them. I did research on my findings, and I will continue to do research to write a research paper. So my findings were in theme 1, how young adults deal with difficulties and the solutions, the severity of the symptoms, feeling powerless, managing and using coping skills. One of the quotes was, "I want to do nothing." And living with bipolar is it's a little overwhelming. Not to quote. It's important to recognize that their own signs and to reduce their symptoms by staying on track, educating themselves, and surrounding them with people that they can count on, that they can totally depend and have a really good support system. Learning those good coping skills and learning the tools and receiving proper treatment, including medication and treatment. Hans is currently on medication and receives treatment and participates in TIPS, which is a treatment for, I think she said it was temperature intense regulating. I know I'm going to forget what that P is, but she talked about how that was an excellent coping skill for her and how she takes cold showers. And Kay talked about how she listens to music and that calms her down when she's in a very irritable mood. As she knows, she can be irritable at work, but she knows that she has to work and have customer service. Theme 2 supports... just make sure I'm getting everything from that. Also, how to regulate their emotions. Which was one of Hans' primary complaint. And that they realize the warning signs of depression and the warning signs of mania and hypomania. So if they know their early warning signs, this helps them to be able to get things in order, and hopefully they're creating an emergency plan. I know Hans is already working on that, where Kay is looking for a new therapist. Theme 2 was a support system and the importance of the relationships. And like I said, Hans already has a support system. She has her therapist. She has a therapist available to her 24 hours a day if she has anything going on. Both of them stated that their mom was their best support. And Kay's quote was, "My mom understands and cuts me some slack." The supportive system is imperative. Maintaining relationships are a crucial part of their recovery, and healthy relationships are just good for their well-being, because bipolar causes a lot of stress on an individual, and having that support network and having people who understand them is large. It is a great support. Health professionals, I read that they are finding that family therapy really helps a lot. It helps the loved ones so that they can ease any of the stress that's going on, and it also help them become accountable and realize what things that are going on, because bipolar can include reckless behaviors, and sometimes it can make them feel really, really low. And so a good support team is always awesome. And then the last theme was transitioning, and how to support transitioning effectively is what I found in education, employment, housing, and relationships. And in education, both of them said they're both not ready for school, but they want higher education, but it's overwhelming and it's stressful. So them learning what's out there and learning to go to disability services to find out what accommodations would work best for them was important. And employment, both of them have jobs. Both of them have part-time jobs. They both like their jobs, but would like something better. And Han said, she enjoys a paycheck. It's the reward. And she also enjoys the children that she works with. And Kay said, I have bills. So she likes her checks. And housing, Kay, I want to have my own housing. And again, focus on exceptional children. Article was about transitioning. And there's more details in the disability and transition to adulthood where they're adjusting to these transitioning and learning how to be independent and live productive lives. So those were my 3 things. So in my discussion, I really am just going to talk really about what they've talked about. And some of the quotes were struggling with controlling my emotions. And then don't want to do anything. This is really major for Kay as well. And they both had that to say. And my mom is my support. Both of them felt their mother were very supportive. The categories in which I found were difficulties, emotion, the diagnosis, actually having them have labeled their own diagnosis, coping, education, perks, ask the miracle questions, support, employment, coworkers, support, solutions, goals, initial concerns, and the exceptional question. How they dealt with things in the past, and my own observations and watching their body language, their movement, and their emotional distress that was particularly evident in hands where we had to take deep breaths. So what does that mean for the future? Well, rehabilitation counselors and WIOA, which stands for the Workforce Investment, which was the Workforce Investment Act, is now the Workforce Innovation and Opportunities Act, which was signed into law July 22nd, 2014. And it is one of the first legislative reform on public workforce system in 15 years. Now, this proposal means that this is a large impact on agencies and organizations to step up and prepare our youth for transition. In our education systems, having to do more with our students with disabilities, IEPs and 504s accommodations, getting them job ready, and for us all to be accountable. This will be circled around person-centered, and just some of the highlights of the reform era that It supports an integrated service delivery system and gives framework through which states and local areas can leverage both federal, state, local resources, and even resources to support in-school and out-of-school youth. This is an awesome for youth and adults, young adults beginning their career explorations. As out of youth must be ages 16 to 24 and not attending any schools, and will support school dropouts within the age limit, but it will give them an opportunity to have out-of-home placement, pregnant and parenting, and individuals with disabilities, low income. All of these will be some of the qualifications to help them through the juvenile system, getting them to having English language learners. It's just a really awesome opportunity to give them more services based on any of these eligibilities. And the in-school youth must be age 14 to 21, attending school, low income, and meet additional conditions like basic skill deficiencies. Again, the English language learner, maybe an offender, homeless, or runaway or foster child, pregnant, the same thing. But what's awesome about this is that it just gives them more opportunities where services were funded for Department of Rehabilitation for those 18 and older. It's now available for youth. And there are 5 new youth program elements like financial literacy, entrepreneur skills training, services that provide labor and market employment information, activities that help youth transition to post-secondary education and training, education offered concurrently at the same context as workforce preparation activities and training for specific occupations and occupational clusters. This emphasizes because 20% of the local youth formula funds must be used for work experiences, to have year-round employment, pre-apprentice programs, on-the-job training, and internship and job shadowing. Me working at Department of Rehabilitation, I've seen lots of changes. I've watched Qualcomm put on a large fair for the youth to come out and connect with people and have these really awesome job networking and have the access for job shadowing. So it's been pretty awesome. And what I learned, well, we've come a long way and still have a long way to go. It's a lifetime community prevalence with potential severe impairments. Clients have a 50% increase in attempting suicide, and they have a high usage of healthcare in both primary and psychiatric care. And that in 1998, treatment was estimated that it could exceed $600,000 per patient. We have a duty as a society to always look out for one another, and we have an employed or learned skilled duty as rehabilitation counselors to advocate and look out for our clients, especially our youth. I learned that support was imperative to a positive recovery, and utilizing the solution-focused therapy was a good way to learn more about my clients and have them think outside the box and learn their own power within. I was delighted in interviewing both of these young ladies, and I am utterly grateful for the opportunity.